Welcome to Travel Buddy, presented by Switchfly. In this podcast, we talk about all things travel, rewards, and loyalty. Let's get to it.
Today we are talking about earning trust before earning revenue. And we have two special guests today, John Hanson and Alex Johnson. Thank you so much for joining. Welcome to the show. Alex, I want to start with you. We are talking in this this segment, about how sometimes relationships and human beings on the other end of our calls is the main way that we actually establish trust, because human beings buy from other human beings. And you had this great story about talking about jerks. Tell me about jerks.
Yeah, I think what's fun for us as salespeople is if you're of a certain generation, you remember, Death of a Salesman, and salespeople have this really bad rap. I think younger people might think of it as like a used car salesman or something along those lines, or grifters trying to sell you junk online. But what actually, good salespeople know what their product is and the problems they solve, and they try to find the businesses that they can help solve those problems for. And a lot of times you can still come across those salespeople that can just be jerks. I mean, we've heard it, at Switchfly, since we've been here 2 years, we've heard over 5 times that there are, experiences where they've had just jerk of a salesperson, and like they want the technology, they need it for their company, but they don't like working with the person that they're talking to. And
not Switchfly jerks.
Not Switchfly jerks.
Switchfly.
Right?
Yeah.
Other industry folks. And I think that as we talk about trust, that makes it really difficult as you hand it off to another team that they want to work with and the long term, because you're just starting off on a bad foot. And I think it's really important that, as we talk about trust, that those the first interactions are really positive, and you want to show that you care, and they're important to you, whether they're a large or small enterprise.
That's right. Yeah, it's a strict no jerks policy. But the point is, establishing a good relationship up front actually leads to more revenue later on if you can establish that trust. And there's ways of doing that and not doing that. We'll talk about those things. So a question, I'll turn it over to John now. When you think about the difference between a partner and a vendor, what are some of the signals that you think of that says this is a partner that's in it with me that I want to work with, rather than just a vendor? What communicates that to you?
Vendors, when I think of vendors, it's often quick transactions, right? Here's the keys, good luck. Partnership's all about establishing trust, establishing yourself as that industry expert, and really lead them on that journey of what's their current solution and where are they trying to go, and how can we potentially help them get there. Again, vendors, I think more of, here you go, here's access, good luck with it. Partnerships, and really how you establish yourself as a partner, is understanding where they're at, where they're trying to go, and how do we lead them there, and what steps are we going to take. And then, of course, once the deal is closed, what does the continued partnership look like? How do we set these mutual goals and define what success looks like for a partnership? And it's a collaborative effort between both parties to really define what this mutual success would look like.
Alex, anything to add onto that?
Yeah, I think he explained it quite well. And it really is about, a vendor, as he said, is a quick sign off. A partnership, you never really you never really stop communicating. It is a continuous cycle, and we're for the length of the contract, and ideally renewals onward. So yeah, you're going to continue building the relationship as you go. And so partnerships, as you start off, it's going to be more labor intensive, more meetings, and a lot more on personalities and getting to know the other people and how they work and their communication style, versus, hey, here's a contract, we solve your problem, sign, good luck. Right? There's going to be some ongoing feedback, that ongoing feedback loop.
Yeah. And when I really think of partnerships, it's a lot of those mutual goals, how we work towards success and define what success looks like for both parties.
Okay. I want to talk about, there's this balance that I think every salesperson has, especially when you're trying to think of yourself as a partner and building a relationship, building the trust. And this is a balance between like, we are talking because there is a business relationship here. We are going to exchange money. This at root is a commercial transaction. And yet I care about you as a human being, and I care about your business, and I want to see your success. But how do you strike that balance when you're talking or going through the sales process, trying to establish trust and relational care, but also this is a commercial activity at root? How do you think about that kind of thing?
So when I think about that, it's really just establishing yourself as the industry partner, not necessarily pushing them to the sale, but providing statistics of what have we seen across the industry? What have we seen from our other partners? Just show those success stories without necessarily pushing them to, hey, we got to sign this deal, we got to close this deal, but rather lead them to that conclusion themselves by being somebody they like, being somebody that they can trust, and showing how we've done this at scale.
Yeah. And I think adding to that, it's not always even just customer examples. It can be examples of deals you've had to turn down or people you've had to. I think establishing trust is huge. It would say, okay, like I don't think we're the right solution for you. Or when you are reaching out to me, like, hey, we don't know. Like, that's why we have a lot of questions for you. We want to make sure we find the value. And a big thing that you can do as a salesperson starting off, and what we like to do at Switchfly is like, we will tell you if we're not the right fit. Like, this isn't, you can kind of talk through what the future looks like, helping paint a picture, saying, if this doesn't work out for either of us, there's mutual benefit here. We both generate revenue from travel bookings. We both, want to scale together and grow together. Switchfly is not a company that has hundreds of clients. We are more focused on very strategic partners that we can grow long-term with. And so we can say, it's like, if this isn't the right fit, then this causes problems with our, client support team and our technical team. We're spending all this time building this thing for something that, maybe for a market or an organization that it's just not a really good fit for. So using the examples of times where, we've had a lot of, small travel agencies reach out to us and they're like, hey, we're looking for more of like a do-it-yourself solution. And we're like, that's not really what we do. Like, Switchfly is more, we integrate into points programs, we're packaging travel products, but we're not for the mom and pop travel agency. And so we don't want to make them go through that ringer or charge them an exorbitant amount of money, like, to them, these small organizations that really doesn't help them or won't let them grow. And by using examples like that helps a company that we know we can likely work with. That helps build trust, because we say, like, hey, we're not in the volume game here. We are for a strategic partner, and we think that you could be that.
Okay. Following that thread, how does confidence play into establishing trust in relationships? And there's a couple of things going on here. One is people like people that are confident. They trust people that are confident. If you come in, you're kind of wavering, you don't know exactly what you want to say, you don't know exactly how you can help them. It's kind of like, I don't know if I want to trust this person or get in a relationship or a partnership with them. So there's that. But then there's also, like, to what you guys are saying is, you've got to know who you're talking to and that you can actually help them and that you're a good fit. So call it your ICP, call it, you being very focused at an organizational level, a corporate level, knowing who you're a fit for and who you're not, but also in a maturity, maybe in your career as well, of knowing, like, I know I have a quota, I know I've got goals, I've got to hit these goals, and yet I don't think I'm a good fit to take this call or to continue this relationship. So how do you think about confidence kind of in those two veins, like establishing trust, but also knowing when to cut it off?
I think it's a lot has to do with transparency. Where are you currently at? Are we a good fit based on what they're saying and where their current solution is and where they're trying to go? Can we help them achieve that? I think for when you display confidence also, you want to share outcomes that we have seen from similar clients and companies rather than making promises of this is where we could go. It all ties back to establishing yourself as the industry expert and understanding what they're really looking for in a partner. And rather than trying to convince them or oversell it, we just share outcomes that we've seen from similar clients.
Yeah, I think transparency was a good word that John used there is, you want to be confident that, hey, like we have a great product. We've got a great team. We solve problems. This isn't a, nice to have solution, but, so you want to come in confident with, what you're good at. But I think when you said a balance, there's also the vulnerability piece. It's like, hey, there's a lot that we don't know. And that's our job, is to help, uncover that. And using the examples we used earlier, saying it's like, hey, now that we've uncovered more like information, we might not be the right fit right now. I think we're going to talk about it here potentially soon, is that a lot of times we run into roadblocks through the process. And a lot of times it comes down to just the development for the development team and timelines for a company. And I think that's probably our number one roadblock or thing that stalls a deal. And that's okay. Like that means, hey, this company's growing. They've got things that they need to build, and we want to show value what we do at Switchfly. And I think building trust is saying, hey, I understand that. Like, I'm not going to push you to close this or get started or overwhelm your team. Like our team needs time as well. And really, and being vulnerable with them too. Like, I mean, we've had it to where we've, had a successful quarter or something, and we have 2 or 3, 4 implementations, and somebody's really gung-ho and excited, and we have to set the expectations and be like, hey, like, we're glad you're excited, but we are at least a month out from being able to get like truly started on building this. And that's great for both of us because we're setting the expectation, laying the groundwork. It adds confidence in their part. They're like, hey, these guys are doing really well, that all these people, that's validating their decision to want to work with us, while also we're being honest and saying, yeah, we're not going to have you ready to go tomorrow, versus lying and or setting like unrealistic expectations. It's only going to cause problems for teams in the future.
Yeah, expectations is a key component of that confidence and trust building too. Because if you set realistic expectations, A, it demonstrates expertise, but B, that we've done this before, but B, it says like, hey, this is what it takes. I'm transparent with the process, and here's where we're at. And if you hit those expectations, those timelines, that builds a lot of trust. And it also builds trust if you say like, hey, I'm a human, like, I don't know the answer to that question. That's a great question. Let me get back to you on that. And that's like, okay, he's a human being, so I love that. Okay, so I want to shift into a segment about more in the weeds of that trust building and creating value and insight for the prospect in the sales process. So what does it look like for you guys that you obviously, like, in order for us to be full partners and go through all the things, we need to be a client, we need to have a signature, that kind of thing. But when it comes to the sales process and marketing process, even of giving away insight and value before there is a signature, how do you think about that? Is it communication? Is it insight? Do you have, materials that you send ahead of time? Like, how does that work?
I think it's a combination of all of that, right? You want to be ready to strike when the iron's hot and they're ready to make a move. Switchfly, as Alex had mentioned, we need our partners to be willing to have resources available for the implementation. And oftentimes they're doing their own development and working on other projects when we start these conversations. So it's taking that prospect through the cycle, providing them different marketing materials that is relevant to them, showing them different case studies that we have done with similar clients and the success that they have seen, and be ready to move once they are ready. And it's just, again, establishing that line of trust. So when they are ready, they come to you for that.
Yeah. And I would also say, when you think about things you can kind of give away, early on in our conversations, I mean, with any sales organization, I've been, I think, selling software for 11 years now. You always get like, hey, what does it cost? Like, what's it cost? Or what are the benefits? Always like really right off the bat. And you're like, you listen to any sales, consultant or hardo person who's read every sales book. They're like, oh, you've got to lead them to this, or you're like, make sure you never give it away until you're this. Like, Switchfly is built a little different. I mean, we have a commercial structure that is mutually beneficial. Like, we are not successful unless our partners are. And so we're able to share that pretty early on. And right off the bat, that helps us earn trust. And it helps us go, like, it makes it seem like this is less of a sales pitch and is more of a, hey, we need you and you need us. Like neither of us can be successful without each other, versus we are, like you mentioned early on, a vendor who we're selling you a service and you're just paying us. That's how we make money, is you just paying us directly. And then obviously we would help, solve a problem or increase value somewhere else. It's like, no, like our commercials are set up to where, we're incentivized to make sure that as many people can book travel as possible and we both win together. And that's something we can give pretty early on in the process that I think helps us out a lot.
Yeah. I think throughout the sales process, a common theme in my conversations is really from the beginning, establishing this relationship. It's not a vendor relationship. It is a true partnership. There is a revenue share component to this. So in addition to just driving additional engagement for your end programs, you can also look at this as a way to make more money for your business, which ultimately, that's the whole goal about every business, right? Drive increased revenue. So of course, we want to really establish this is a partnership. And being a partnership, both have to give some. We need you to have these resources available. And we'll also work to set these mutual goals to define what success looks like for a partnership.
Yeah. I like that. It's always better to have the drive revenue conversation than the reduce cost conversation. But it's always a push and pull, and this is always a debate in sales circles is, do you lean into driving up the problem and the urgency and testing your price elasticity and your pricing power and pricing as much as the market can bear? But then there's like, hey, this is our pricing. This is how we work. This is a structure. We're in it with you. We want you to see how we make our money so that you understand what we're all about here. We're on the same team. You win, we win. There's all these kind of different dynamics that can play in, but being a partner and being as open as you can about things, I think, is always the way to go to establish that kind of trust. That's really great.
I think a good piece to that too is when we share customer examples, there's a thing that we do that I think is helpful, and this works, I think, well in pretty much any sales org, no matter what the business is like setting the right expectations. So it's like, hey, here's couple case studies to show we've done this, and this is why you should believe that this is possible. But also when we are putting together estimates or projections, right, we basically say up front, hey, we lowered these significantly to show that this is a possibility, this is an achievable goal that we think is based on what we've done. So it's not the obviously the front-facing case study that we plaster everywhere to show everybody that, how successful we are. We make it say, hey, these are real expectations. These are achievable goals. And when you basically do what you say you're going to do, I think that's a big part of it, to where you're not leading them into unrealistic expectations. We do that, fairly early on when we speak to commercials, is because we want to give them an idea of the revenue and potential that there is, but we set the bar pretty low to show that even that bar that's super achievable is a huge win for both of us. Cool. And then when you blow those goals out of the water, like we've done a few times, well, now those customers are quick to wanting to build a case study because they had this in their mind that they were down here, and now the sky's the limit. And I think that also goes into play when we talk about relationship. John mentioned it too, and it's really good, relationship building. When you build a champion within an organization and you say, hey, we are partners, we're going to continue working together, especially, not every organization is this way, but Switchfly works this way, where John and I are still, very involved after we, solidify an agreement. And so during the implementation process, during the launch phase and even scaling growth, well, you've built that champion and you make a promise that you can keep. Say, I will be here and I'll be available if you need me. And we've had situations arise where, hey, you don't know everything that's going to happen in the scoping process or in the markets or things come up with clients all the time and you have to adapt. But if you said, hey, I'm going to be here for you, and I get a text or a call from my person and he says, hey, I need you in here. This is happening and we need to come up with a solution, and you make yourself available. Well, now you've kept that promise from before, and now you've proved that you are trustworthy because you made a promise you can keep. And I think that's really important, is doing what you say you will do.
That's such a great point. I'm reaching over here, grabbing this book, The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey. This is such a great book to talk about that very thing. When you establish that trust, you have a great relationship. You are the partner. You've got a champion. And when inevitably life's vicissitudes create a problem, because this is how life goes, you have something to fall back on. You can actually move a lot more quickly because you've established that trust up front. And it's a huge value add for the relationship.
I think something that really sets apart a partner from a vendor is stepping outside of your naturally defined role into doing some of those more partnership things, whether it's running different webinars with their end programs that might not have any impact on revenue for you or your company, but you're just trying to help them grow their program. That's what a real partner is. It's stepping out of those defined roles to really help see the success of the program grow.
Yeah. Yeah, at the end of the day, it's like, I don't really care what your title is. I need help. I have a problem. Please help me. So
Exactly.
yeah, as much as you can jump in and help, that's good. Okay, so I want to switch to another segment. Alex, you kind of alluded to this earlier, that you are, as all of us are, you are one solution among many in a market that has many different alternatives. Some can call that competitors, but we live in this world where you are not the only option available. Sometimes, though, a competitor doesn't look like another company that you can name. It could be, like Alex, what you're talking about. Maybe it's development team speed. Maybe it's a product roadmap. The client, customer, prospects roadmap is actually the biggest competitor that you have. Could be delay, could be politics within the internal team. How many sales newsletters have you seen where it's like, your biggest competitor is no decision? And it's like, yeah, okay, no decision. So talk to us a little bit about how you see working through those kinds of things from like a competitive standpoint, how you present your, just kind of work through that in the trust building exercise.
Yeah, I think it's about being flexible, and that starts with the organization, executive leadership team, management, things like that is the ability to be flexible. I think it's always interesting with Switchfly. We've been around for 23 plus years, but as the company has grown, it's evolved, and we've almost kept a startup mentality the last several years that have allowed us to be flexible. And I think a big part of that is when you mentioned a great one, like that we've talked about before, is when, a customer says, hey, I love this. Like, we want to get started, but we have like 3 new, development projects going on right now. So it could be 3 months, it could be 6 months. It's okay. Well, yeah, we could always sign a contract and we could do all the paperwork stuff in advance. But a lot of times the way maybe commercials are structured, or how like the timeline of launch and really expectations, both from the customer and from internal teams within an organization, being flexible helps a lot, because we can, maybe switch one of our commercials from, X to Y, because that fits them better. It also fits us, makes it more sense for us, because there's less pressure on this partner to achieve results necessarily, but we know that we can secure them as a partner. And by being flexible, that allows us, that makes us look like a true partner, versus not just even a vendor, but like another competitor's like, nope, you have until the end of this quarter or this deal goes away. You no longer get those. It's actually going to be increased. And if you don't hit XYZ and, XYZ goal, you are, you're going to owe us or something like that. Everybody has the commercial structures. They have like their policies and, their preferred ways to work, but being flexible really, builds trust, but it makes you want to be a partner. It makes you be a partner that somebody wants to work with and feels confident working with, so that if in 6 months, they have a product that just crashes, or the development side, or they lost 3 or 4 people, and hey, Switchfly, we know we told you we wanted to get started by here, or that we were expected to hit these numbers by this point, but here's what happened. It's like, yeah, those things happen. All right, we'll pivot with you and we'll make this work. So I just think flexibility is key, and that doesn't happen in the bureaucracies of larger companies or, just very stubborn leadership groups.
Yeah, how do you know when there's like a legitimate like actual problem that they want it, they're in, but there's like a technical, I don't know, obstacle. And when is it just like bureaucracy and politics? And how do you kind of navigate both of those things? Because those seem like two different ways of managing that relationship.
I'd say each deal is unique, right? So you have to have that flexibility, that startup mentality to be able to work with them, whether it's the bureaucracy of it's slowing down the deal. Okay, well, what can we do then? Do we need to set up a call with some of the other key stakeholders and talk through this and really understanding what is the main reason? Is it timelines? Is it development resources? Is it budget? And just really understanding that. But it all ties back to being that trusted partner. We can make the move whenever you are ready. And whether if it's technical issues, okay, well, let's bring in our tech team. Let's sit down and let's go through the documentation. Let's understand where these technical hurdles are coming from and what can we do to overcome them together.
I think identifying between the two, whether it's bureaucracy, development, whatever. I mean, there are buying signals and there are like what we run into in sales. I mean, it doesn't matter what you sell. This comes up a lot where it's like, oh, you have the raw person. Oh, I love this. We totally need this. We can get started with this right away. But then that person, it might be a champion or, maybe not necessarily the key decision maker or one of several decision makers. He takes that back and it's like, you have to temper expectations and be like, all right, that's great. So I think, this comes down to being patient, but also not, getting your own expectations up until you see the real buying signals. Because a lot of the challenges with like bureaucracy or something you can see coming early enough if you can catch it quick enough. Things come out of the woodwork a lot of times, like legal. You can see, hey, there's ways around it. We've run into the past, legal taking like 2, 3, 4 months, and it's like they've got other things that they're doing as well. Well, that our decision makers have been very, hey, like we're ready to go. Like this is truly holding us up. But then there are situations where like if you're working with the CEO or the main decision maker, they can influence like, hey, I need you guys to actually like they go to legal and say we need to wrap this up. But if it is dragging out, you can kind of start to understand it's the bureaucracy. Like maybe they weren't 100% sold or we didn't have the right person. And these are like excuses from maybe your internal champion who doesn't want to just straight up say like, I actually didn't get all the buy-in like I told you. And that can happen. And so it is about being flexible, but it is kind of understanding and asking the right questions as you go through the process to understand it's like, is this really development or like, were you just not really sold? I mean, it happens to us all the time. Like, and you want to get excited as well, but you have to pay attention to like what's actually possible.
And I think a lot of it boils back down to trust, right? Once you just establish that relationship with your prospect, they trust you. They're going to naturally be more open, more transparent of what's going on. What are the actual roadblocks? And just have that better understanding for when the partnership does launch and you have that foundation already.
It's a little good cop, bad cop. And you got to find out it's the bad cop. It makes me think of the story. I went to seminary and I had a professor tell me, if you're, becoming a new leader at a church or something like that, you might have your organizational structure within the church or something, but there's going to be a little old lady in the back pew that's been there for 40 years. And she is actually the power center of this entire operation. And if you don't know her, because you're looking at the leadership structure and she's not on it, but she actually says what happens and what doesn't happen in this church. Anyway, it makes me think like, you always got to know who's the little old lady in this organization that you need to know about. I don't know. It's maybe neither here nor there, but it's always been a helpful little insight for me.
Yeah, and I think a ways that's funny. We have seen that before, but also I think what made me think, when we talked about the bureaucracy piece of it as well is, I mentioned earlier about how some sales orgs or companies, they'll like put your feet to the fire just because like, they might not be the best system, but sometimes it is about like putting money where your mouth is. Like, hey, if you have built trust and you've built this champion, then you can actually say, like, sometimes you have to just tell them, like, I always try to think of the right analogy because I'm from the Midwest. And so we say, like, go to the bathroom or get off the pot in a less nice way. But it's like, hey, like, we've said we're going to do this and we've accommodated you on X, Y, and Z. If you can't, do what you say you're going to do, then we're out. And being able to walk away and like truly believing that, I think is the hardest thing to do in sales. But if you're willing to walk away, I think that also shows your champion and or that org that you're trying to work with, just how serious you are and that like what's important to us and them, because we come across some of these things where, whether it's the development or like the wishy-washy back and forth, or even just their communication style might be a little more harsh. It's like, do I want my team to have to work with this going forward? And I think that matters just as much as closing a deal. It's like, are these people going to be a nightmare to work for? Like, they don't want us to be a nightmare to work with. Why would we want to manage that? I think it's really important. So when you're dealing with those different things, it's identifying, is this, actually the real problem of why we can't move forward? And kind of highlighting like, hey, like we might be willing to walk away if this is, how it's going to affect our team going forward.
Yeah, it goes back to that confidence, knowing where your value is. And there is such a thing as bad revenue. It might make your numbers look good, but it's going to drive your team nuts, that kind of thing.
It's the whole 80-20 rule, like 20% of your revenue, 20% is going to cause the most problems, even though they might not be the most of your revenue.
That's right. Okay, so last segment here. Talk to me a little bit about some of the outcomes that you guys have had recently, and just ways that you're working through this process, building trust, building relational capital, and then of course you have those outcomes on the other end.
Yeah, I think one really good one was we had a partner. It was a long sales process, and we built. Trust. Like I had a champion, internally and was pretty high, but was not the main decision maker. And, even throughout the sales process, we had a few things where the expectations were just something that like we couldn't deliver at the time. It's like, they wanted, the full enterprise solutions but for like no budget at all. It's like, you have to temper expectations with those things, but we were able to work around it. And I think what was exciting was by building that champion. And I mentioned like, being able to just get a hold of me, like as a new organization and, or a new company, things are constantly changing. There's, especially in the world of travel, right? We deal with, new laws being made, new certifications that are required, and things come up. And I was really excited to have like, be able to, my champion be able to get a hold of me. And it's like, oh, wow. This is like things are hitting the fan right now. Like we should jump on a call and get all of our teams together to kind of work through it. And I would say that they've become one of our bigger champions in the market. And it was because of the fact that things didn't go right, throughout the process. They weren't as smooth as you'd want them to be in the sales process. They weren't as smooth as we were kicking or implementing. And definitely as we kicked off a program, new things came into play. But because we had built such a good relationship with this partner, we got through it pretty quickly and somewhat smoothly to where now they're just running well, to where we brought them a new marketing strategy, just like a new thing that we could help with. And they immediately took the meeting, and we've now launched with that, right? Because they trust us. They're like, hey, this will help us. And I think that's really important. I think we're going to have a case study of that coming out really soon. And that all comes down to building trust and building that internal relationship.
That's such a great story. John, how about you?
Yeah, I could add on to that. So just really driving the outcomes. Like we've had a deal that the adoption wasn't what we were hoping or expecting. So then whoever's owning that from their side, they came to us like, how do we drive this more with the program? And it involves us stepping out of our naturally defined roles to, hey, do we run different webinars with year-end programs? Do we provide different marketing materials that you can share with your programs to really get them excited about travel? know it's a different redemption option for their users, and really just talk about the value props that comes for both them as a company. And then they can go speak that in their client conversations with their account executives, with their account managers. So it's just really establishing that layer of trust, that partnership. It's, hey, if it's not going the way it's expected, why is that? Let's break it down and really understand where these gaps are and how can we overcome them by working together, and whether it be holding these different webinars or holding these different meetings with the end clients to ultimately just drive more bookings and more revenue for the company.
So trust going in, smooths out everything after the fact, and then you can actually get to some of those outcomes that you want. Maybe on script, maybe off script, but either way, you get to where you're trying to go and everybody's happy. It's a win-win, and trust is essential to that. Is that a fair summary?
I think that's a fair summary. That trust and flexibility, right? Nothing ever goes as planned. Every deal, every sales cycle, it's all unique. So it's just being able to roll with the punches as they come.
Yeah, amen. Okay, last question. Yeah, last question for both of you. Where's a favorite place you ever travel?
I'd say Italy.
Okay, Italy. What part?
On the Western coast. I just love the history and the culture that Italy offers. Some of the most scenic and beautiful areas of the world. And yeah, I just really enjoyed my time there.
I love that. I love that.
My favorite solo trip was just this last summer. It was Ireland. But I got to say, like, doing Yacht Week in Croatia, it's kind of hard to beat. So...
Okay, I want to go with you next time. That sounds great.
Yeah.
That sounds
it's
fun.
tough. It's traveling's a lot more fun when you have 10 other people with you than just a solo trip sometimes. But both beautiful countries. You know, I think that's why John and I and pretty much everybody at Switchfly got into it, was because we all love travel and we want to make it easier for other people. So,
Amen. Well, maybe next episode we'll do Yacht Week in Italy, and we'll make it happen.
sounds like a plan.
That's great. Okay. All right, John, Alex, thank you so much for joining. Loved having you on the show, and hopefully we'll see you back.
Thanks.